Oof. Did that last rep push your pec a little bit too far? In this video, we're gonna break down the best rehab exercises for a pec strain. Rehab, welcome back to the channel. Dr. Arash here to chat with you all things pec strain related. But before we dive into some exercises that can be done for your pec strain, let's first define the roles of those pec muscles and what exactly a muscle strain means. So those pec muscles are made of two actual muscles, pectoralis major and the pec minor, pectoralis minor. The pec major is a fan-shaped muscle that lies superficially on your chest, and there are two heads, the sternal and the clavicular fibers. And the main actions of these muscles are to adduct the arm, internally rotate the arm, and then flex the arm. Now that's the pec major. The pec minor is a smaller muscle that lies deep underneath that pec major, and the role is primarily to move that scapula or that shoulder blade behind your back. Oftentimes a pec strain is of the major, the bigger muscle here. This muscle gets strained when we put our shoulder joint into too much extension or external rotation for what the tissue can handle. That's why when we do a bench press, oftentimes if your pec is not strong enough, it'll pop or it'll strain. And most of these strains occur at that musculotendinous junction. That's where the muscle meets the tendon. That's just the weakest link. The next question we often get is, should I get surgery or not for this? Now, if you have a full rupture, typically, this will result into someone opting into a surgical intervention. A partial tear is where conservative treatments such as physical therapy shines brightest. Early intervention has been shown to have a better outcome than waiting, demonstrated here by a study comparing a group that started rehab at day 2 versus day 9. All right, let's dive into pec strain rehab so you can get back to working out and playing sports again. For pec strains, I'm gonna break down rehab into early, middle, and late stage. Now for early stage, we wanna get some light activation of that pec muscles while building up all the other surrounding scapula stabilizing muscles. So I'm gonna show you two great exercises for that. The first one, we'll use a very light resistance band, anchor at about shoulder height. And then from here, walk out while keeping the arm directly in front of you. Now, the purpose of keeping the arm directly in front of you is you wanna make sure this exercise is isometric, where you're not going through a range of motion. Now, once you have a good position to where you feel the muscles activated, and it may be a little bit uncomfortable, but make sure that the pain does not exceed a 4 out of 10. Now, when you find that position, you're gonna just walk back and forth. This is gonna provide the way that you can perform repetitions with an isometric exercise. That way we're building up the pec without taking it through any range of motion. And you can work through different angles with this. If you find like a certain angle feels weaker or not as stable, work into that. So now I'm going a little bit lower, and then same thing, if I wanna go a little bit higher, I can do that as well. But the purpose of this is to walk back and forth while keeping the arm in a stationary position the entire time. So that's exercise number 1. And remember, don't exceed a 4 out of 10 pain, and make sure that you keep the arm isometric. You don't want to go through range of motion. Actually, in the early stages, you want to avoid stretching that tissue because you've just created a strain where you stretch the tissue, and you don't want to continue to stretch it. Even though it may feel like you're providing a little bit of temporary relief, it can create more issues with that strain itself. So that's exercise 1. Exercise 2 is a serratus anterior exercise, which is a very important muscle in building up scapula stability. So I have a mini band here wrapped around both my wrists. I like to be in a mild squat position. And then from here, I'm going to punch out overhead while keeping tension on the band the entire time until I get fully overhead, letting my shoulder blades come out while I do this, and then slowly lowering. Now, this is not going to target my pec muscles, but it will build up a lot of the surrounding scapula stability muscles, like that serratus anterior. And as you spread that band, you'll notice your posterior cuff is gonna be working really, really hard to do this. And if for some reason it bothers you going fully overhead, remember that 4 out of 10 pain scale that you want to focus on. So if it's 5, 6 out of 10 pain here, go a little bit less and then just repeat back and forth. For both of these, I like to go about 2 to 3 sets of 10 repetitions, and that is early stage pec strain rehab. Once the early stage exercises start to become easier and do not provide you a challenge of activation, we want to progress to the mid-stage exercises. Now for the mid-stage exercises, this is where demand becomes a little more challenging on those pec tissues to continue to provide stimulus to grow. So there's 2 exercises that we'll go into today, both commonly performed exercises, but we really want to focus on targeting that pec major. The first one is going to be a pec fly, where I have the band wrapped as some type of anchor, and I am putting the band in each one of my hands. I'm going to walk out to find a good challenge for myself, and I'm going to perform a pec fly while really focusing on the eccentric part of this motion. I want to keep the elbows fairly straight, put most of the load on the pec as I go back. And if for some reason going all the way back really bothers me and that pain goes past that 4, then go through partial range. Don't go all the way back at that point. And then slowly work your way into more and more range of motion as you do this. And if you really want to target one side and you feel like both sides are not even close to equal, what you can do is perform this pec fly just unilaterally. You can even double up the load and perform it like so, where you're just pulling with one arm, slowly returning back to that starting position and then repeating. The goal of this stage is to build up load and load tolerance onto that pec muscle. So that's the first one. Now, the second one is going to be a push-up, but the way that we want to focus on performing these push-ups are focusing on the eccentric part of this movement, because we can oftentimes load the tissue more on the eccentric part than the concentric where we're pushing away. So as we do this eccentric push-up, what we're going to focus on, same thing with the fly, is to slowly go down until we get to the floor. Let the knees drop down, push yourself back, and then repeat without performing the concentric part of this motion. And you're gonna slowly repeat back and forth. And if you want to start modified completely, you definitely can do that. And then as you push yourself up, you're going to push your weight onto your knees and then repeat back and forth. Again, the goal of this is to perform the eccentric part of this motion, whether you do a modified version or you do the full version. And if you're doing the full version and you're like, hey, this is still too easy and I don't feel like I'm challenging my pec muscles enough, now check out this variation. This is gonna be somewhat of a unilateral eccentric push-up where you're gonna lean most of your weight onto one side, one hand is gonna be light, and then you're slowly lowering back down, putting both weight onto both hands, put yourself back up, and then repeat by doing a slow eccentric push-up on one arm. And then you can switch sides, of course, but you wanna make sure to challenge yourself. And if you're doing just a normal push-up and that's not challenging enough, you wanna find ways to constantly provide more and more load on the tissue. Now that you've built up some tolerance with the mid-stage rehab, it's time to get back to that barbell and start performing movements with velocity. So the first exercise that we have here is a barbell bench press, but I have a band wrapped underneath. This will do 2 things for us. One, will provide some accommodating resistance, so that way the more challenging part of the movement comes as we elevate and as we get towards the top. And the second piece is that I love this for performing power-based movements as I want to explode out from that bottom position. So I'm going to show you guys a few repetitions of this. I'm going to get set up about 1.5 times the width of my shoulders. And then from here, I'm going to perform, first I'll go slow and controlled as I push up, slow on the way down, and I can go a little quicker on the way up. And then as you feel comfortable with this, you want to perform this with speed. So I'm gonna go down and then explode on my way up. I wanna hear that noise. And with this, you only wanna perform about 5 to 6 reps, because after that, you'll notice that you should start fatiguing and you shouldn't be able to move as quick as you did with the first 5 to 6 reps. So this is a great movement that I have some of the light prehab bands wrapped all the way across from one side to the other. Now, the second exercise I'm gonna perform on a elevated surface. I like to start with this plyometric push-up on an elevated surface. As you feel more comfortable, you can progress towards the floor, but this is a great way to ensure that you're exploding as you elevate out of that push-up. So I'm gonna start here. I'm gonna slowly go down again, same thing as I did on the last one, and push as hard and quick as I can out of here to make it feel like I'm standing all the way back up. I don't wanna use my legs to lift myself up. It should be all shoulder power. And then I'm gonna slowly return back to that bottom position and explode out. And just repeat back and forth. Same thing. I'm gonna shoot for 5 to 6 repetitions. And the lower you go, the more challenging it is. So if I wanna find an elevated surface, maybe I wanna do it off of this, it's gonna be a bit easier for me to explode back to that starting position and then repeat back and forth. And these are great ways to build up that pec muscle strength, but also power, which is important as you return back to higher level movements or some sports. Pec strains can feel frustrating, but with appropriate and early interventions, they can improve. Key takeaways from rehabbing a pec strain include: 1, start early and do it often. 2, discomfort of about 4 out of 10 pain is okay and expected. Listen to your body and expect a little bit of discomfort as you go through the rehab process. And 3, rehab does not stop when your pain is gone. Continue to build up capacity to minimize risk of future injuries. Once you have strained your pec once, you are at higher risk of restraining it. If you're looking for more content or an inclusive program, check out our Prehab app that has over 50 programs to choose from. Thanks for watching Prehab, and if this was helpful, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Also, if you have any content requests, make sure to drop it in the comments below. See you next time.
Hey, did you like this video? If you did, you should definitely check out the Prehab app. It includes all of our programs, a brand new workout library, and tons more videos like the one you saw today. Check it out by clicking on this link. You get a free trial. Take control of your health today.